The celebration in the village lasted late into the night. The Valens sang songs of victory, their glowing eyes reflecting the light of the fire as they danced and shared stories. Clara sat quietly on the edge of the gathering, her knife still resting in her lap. Despite the joy around her, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only a temporary reprieve. Logan wouldn't give up so easily. He had come here for a reason, and Clara knew it wasn't just to find her. Ethan noticed her silence and joined her, sitting cross-legged beside her. "You did good today," he said softly. "The Valen trusts you more than ever now." Clara nodded but didn't smile. "It's not over," she said. "Logan won't stop until he gets what he wants. And whatever it is, it's probably bad news for all of us." Ethan frowned. "Do you think he knows about the metal fragments or the carvings?" "I don't know," Clara admitted. "But if he does, he'll try to take them, or worse, destroy everything to get them." They sat in silence for a while, watching the flames flicker. The weight of what lay ahead hung heavy in the air. Clara knew she couldn't afford to relax, not even for a moment. She needed answers, and she needed them fast. The next morning, Clara approached Lyra. The elder was tending to one of the glowing moss patches near the center of the village, her movements slow and deliberate. Clara knelt beside her. "Lyra," she began, "can you tell me more about those carvings? About the humans who came before?" Lyra paused, her glowing eyes meeting Clara's. For a moment, she said nothing, then gestured for Clara to follow her. They walked together to the edge of the village, where the ancient carvings were etched into the rocks. Lyra ran her fingers over the symbols, her expression thoughtful. She spoke slowly, and Ethan translated for Clara. "She says these markings tell the story of the first humans who came here," Ethan explained. "They promised peace and trade, but their true goal was to exploit the planet's resources. When the Valen resisted, the humans attacked. Many lives were lost." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of resources?" she asked. Lyra pointed to the glowing moss and then to the strange plants in the fields. "Energy," Ethan translated. "The moss and plants produce a rare energy source. It's powerful and valuable." Clara's stomach tightened. That had to be why Logan was here. If he discovered the energy source, he would stop at nothing to claim it. And if he did, the Valen's way of life would be destroyed. "We need to protect it," Clara said firmly. "If Logan finds out about the energy, he'll tear this place apart." Lyra nodded, her expression grave. "We will fight," she said to Ethan. "But we cannot do it alone." Clara understood. The Valen were skilled and resourceful, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. If Logan returned with reinforcements, the village wouldn't stand a chance. Clara knew she had to come up with a plan, one that would keep the Valen safe and expose Logan's greed to the rest of humanity. Over the next few days, Clara worked tirelessly to prepare. She helped fortify the village's defenses, teaching the Valen how to use traps and ambush to their advantage. She also scouted the surrounding area, searching for any weaknesses Logan might exploit. But most importantly, she focused on gathering evidence, anything that could prove his intentions. One evening, while exploring a cave system near the village, Clara stumbled upon something shocking. Hidden deep inside the cavern was a cache of old Earth technology tools, weapons, and even pieces of machinery. Some of it looked damaged or abandoned, but other parts seemed intact. Among the items was a data pad, its screen cracked but still functional. Clara's heart raced as she powered it on. If she could access the information stored inside, it might hold the proof she needed. She brought the data pad back to the village and showed it to Ethan. "Can you figure out how to read this?" she asked. Ethan examined it carefully. "I think so," he said. "It'll take some time, though." While Ethan worked on the data pad, Clara turned her attention to another problem. Terran. Though he had warmed up to her during the battle, his distrust of humans ran deep. He had started questioning whether Clara truly understood the threat Logan posed. One afternoon, he confronted her directly. "You say you're different from them," Tioran said, his voice sharp. "But you're still human. How can we trust?" You and your own kind betrayed us. Clara met his gaze, her expression steady. Because I've seen what happens when people like Logan win, she said. They don't care about anyone but themselves. I'm not like that, and I'll do whatever it takes to stop him. Kayron studied her for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. Prove it, he said. Show us you mean what you say. Clara took his challenge to heart. Over the next few days, she threw herself into helping the Valen prepare for the inevitable confrontation. She trained with them, teaching them how to use makeshift weapons and tactics. She also shared her knowledge of Logan's crew, explaining their strengths and weaknesses. Slowly but surely, the villagers began to see her as an ally rather than an outsider. Finally, Ethan managed to crack the datapad. What he found confirmed Clara's worst fears. The files contained detailed plans for mining operations, maps of the planet's resources, and orders from Earth Command authorizing the extraction of the energy source at any cost. There were even recordings of Captain Logan discussing the mission with his superiors, boasting about the wealth they would bring back to Earth. This is it, Clara said, her voice trembling with anger. This proves everything. Ethan nodded grimly. Now we just need to get it off planet. If we can send this to Earth, it'll expose Logan and his crew for what they really are. Clara agreed, but getting the datapad to Earth wouldn't be easy. The Valen didn't have the technology to transmit such information, and Logan's ships were too heavily guarded to sneak aboard. They needed a distraction, a way to draw Logan's attention away from the village long enough to act. That's when Clara came up with a risky plan. We'll lure them into a trap, she said. Use the terrain to our advantage. While they're distracted, one of us can sneak onto their ship and send the data. The idea was dangerous, but the Valen agreed to help. They set up decoys and false trails leading away from the village, creating the illusion of a larger force waiting to ambush Logan's crew. Meanwhile, Clara volunteered to be the one to board the ship. You can't go alone, Ethan protested. It's too risky. I'm the best choice, Clara insisted. I know their systems. I know how they think. And I owe it to the Valen to finish this. After much debate, Ethan reluctantly agreed. Together, they finalized the plan, ensuring every detail was in place. The Valen prepared for battle, while Clara and Ethan waited for the right moment to strike. When Logan's ships returned, the trap was set. The humans followed the decoys, walking straight into the ambush. As chaos erupted, Clara slipped away, making her way toward the largest ship. Her heart pounded as she climbed aboard, her knife ready in case she encountered resistance. Inside the ship, Clara moved quickly, navigating the familiar corridors until she reached the communications room. She plugged the datapad into the console and began uploading the files. The process was agonizingly slow, each second stretching endlessly as she listened for signs of pursuit. Finally, the upload completed. Clara exhaled in relief, but her victory was short-lived. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, growing louder with each passing second. She grabbed the datapad and prepared to defend herself. A group of soldiers burst into the room, their weapons drawn. Clara raised her knife, her mind racing. She was outnumbered, but she refused to surrender, not without a fight. Drop it. One of the soldiers barked, stepping forward. Clara hesitated, her grip tightening on the knife. Then suddenly, a loud explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered and alarms blared. The distraction was working. The Valen had succeeded in drawing Logan's forces away, seizing the pillar. Opportunity, Clara lunged at the nearest soldier, knocking him to the ground. The others scrambled to react, but she was already moving, darting past him and heading for the exit. Shots rang out behind her, but she didn't look back. She had done what she came to do. As she emerged from the ship, Clara saw the battlefield below. The Valen were holding their own, using the terrain to outmaneuver Logan's crew. Smoke billowed from one of the smaller ships, its engines crippled by the Valen's traps. Logan himself stood near the wreckage, shouting orders and looking increasingly desperate. Clara rejoined Ethan and the others, her chest heaving with exertion. "It's done," she said. The data's been sent. Ethan grinned, clapping her on the shoulder. You did it! But Clara knew the fight wasn't over yet. Logan was still dangerous, and his remaining forces were regrouping. The Valen braced themselves for another wave of attacks, their resolve unshaken. For now, though, Clara allowed herself a small sense of triumph. She had faced her enemies head-on and proven herself to the Valen. Whatever happened next, she was ready. Together, they would defend their home and ensure Logan's greed never touched this planet again. Clara's days in the Valen village had become a rhythm of work, learning, and quiet reflection. She felt more at home here than she ever expected to, surrounded by people who were slowly beginning to trust her. The villagers included her in their daily tasks, shared meals with her, and even allowed her to participate in their ceremonies. For the first time since being abandoned, Clara felt like she belonged somewhere. But peace never lasts forever. One morning, as Clara helped repair a broken irrigation system near the fields, a group of scouts returned to the village in a hurry. Their faces were tense, and they spoke quickly to Lyra, the elder. Clara couldn't understand their words, but the urgency in their voices was clear. Ethan, who had been nearby, rushed over to listen. When he turned to Clara, his expression was grim. They've spotted ships, he said quietly. In the sky. Clara's heart sank. Ships meant visitors, and on this planet, visitors were rarely friendly. Are they human? She asked. Dreading the answer, Ethan hesitated. They think so, but they're not sure. The scouts say the ships are bigger than anything we've seen before. Clara clenched her fists, her mind racing. Could it be her old crew? Had Captain Logan and the others returned to finish what they started? Or was it someone else entirely? Either way, the arrival of outsiders spelled trouble for both her and the Valen. The village erupted into chaos as news spread. The Valen gathered in the center of the village, speaking in hushed tones. Some began packing supplies, while others prepared weapons, long spears and bows made from sturdy vines. Clara noticed Tioren among them, his face hard with determination. He caught her eye briefly, then looked away, his earlier acceptance replaced by suspicion. Ethan pulled Clara aside. We need to decide what to do, he said. If these ships belong to humans, they might try to take advantage of the Valen. Again, we can't let that happen. Clara nodded, her thoughts swirling. She wanted answers about the ships, about her crew, but she also knew she couldn't risk putting the Valen in danger. They had taken her in, trusted her, and taught her how to survive. She owed them loyalty. What's the plan? She asked. Ethan glanced toward the mountains. There's an old lookout post higher up. If we can get there, we might be able to see where the ships are heading. It'll give us time to prepare. Clara agreed, and together they set out for the lookout post. The climb was steep and exhausting, but neither of them slowed down. As they reached the top, Clara scanned the horizon. In the distance, she saw them 3 massive ships descending through the clouds, their metallic hulls glinting in the sunlight. Her stomach churned as realization hit her. These weren't just any ships. They were Earth vessels. It's them, she whispered. My crew. Ethan frowned. You're sure? Clara nodded, her jaw tightening. I recognize the design. Those are the same ships I came here on. Her voice was bitter, filled with anger and betrayal. They're either here to find me or to make sure I'm dead. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. We'll figure this out. Together. Back in the village, tensions ran high. Lyra called a meeting, gathering everyone in the central clearing. Clara stood beside Ethan as the elder addressed the crowd. Though Clara couldn't understand all the words, she could feel the weight of Lyra's speech. The Valen were preparing for the worst. Afterward, Lyra approached Clara and Ethan. We must protect our home, she said, her voice firm. If these visitors come here, we will defend ourselves. Clara nodded. I'll help however I can. Lyra studied her for a moment, then gave a small nod of approval. You have earned our trust, Clara. Do not break it. Clara swallowed hard, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She wouldn't let the Valen down, not after everything they had done for her. Over the next few hours, the village transformed into a fortress. Barriers were erected around the perimeter, made from logs and woven vines. Weapons were distributed, and scouts were sent out to monitor the ship's movements. Clara worked alongside the Valen, reinforcing defenses and strategizing with Ethan. She knew the humans aboard those ships, if that's who they really were, wouldn't hesitate to attack if they thought it would benefit them. She couldn't let that happen. As night fell, the tension in the air grew thicker. Clara sat by the fire, her mind racing. What would her crew want? Would they try to negotiate? Or would they come in guns blazing? She thought about Captain Logan, about the way he had dismissed her concerns and accused her of slowing them down. He wouldn't care about the Valen or their way of life. To him, they would be obstacles, nothing more. Her thoughts were interrupted by Tioran, who approached her cautiously. "You will fight with us?" he asked, his tone hesitant but serious. Clara met his gaze. "Yes," she said firmly. "These people are my family now. I won't let anyone hurt them." Tioran nodded, a flicker of respect in his eyes. "Good. We will need your strength." The next morning, the scouts returned with alarming news. The ships had landed not far from the village, and a group of humans was heading their way. They were armed and moving quickly. Clara's heart raced. There was no time to waste. She joined Ethan and a group of Valen warriors as they set up an ambush along the path leading to the village. Using the terrain to their advantage, they hid behind rocks and thickets, waiting silently for the intruders to arrive. When the humans finally appeared, Clara recognized them immediately. Captain Logan led the group, his face cold and calculating. Behind him were several crew members, their weapons drawn. Clara's hands tightened around her knife as anger surged through her. She wanted to confront them, to demand answers, but she forced herself to stay hidden. Now wasn't the time. The trap was simple but effective. As the humans entered the narrow pass, the Valen sprang into action. Nets fell from above, tangling the invaders and sending them sprawling. Spears and arrows flew, targeting their weapons, rather than their bodies. Within minutes, the humans were disarmed and surrounded. Captain Logan looked around wildly, his face red with fury. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice loud and commanding. "Who dares attack us?" Clara stepped forward, her knife still in hand. "It's over, Logan," she said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. "You left me to die, but I survived. And now you're trespassing on land that doesn't belong to you." Logan's eyes widened in shock when he saw her. "Clara?" he stammered. "You're alive?" "Thanks to the Valen," she shot back. "They saved me. Something you clearly didn't care about." Logan scowled, trying to regain control of the situation. "This isn't your fight," he snapped. "Step aside, and maybe we'll let you live." Clara laughed bitterly. "You don't get to make demands here. Not anymore." Before Logan could respond, Lyra stepped forward, her presence commanding. She addressed the humans in her melodic language, her tone sharp and unyielding. Ethan translated for Clara's benefit. "She's telling them to leave. If they refuse, they'll face consequences." Logan glared at Lyra, then at Clara. "Fine," he growled. "We'll go. But this isn't over." As the humans retreated, the Valen kept watch, ensuring they didn't double back. Clara watched them go, her chest heaving with a mix of relief and lingering anger. They had been defeated for now, but she knew they wouldn't give up easily. Later, that evening, as the village celebrated their victory, Clara found herself reflecting on what had happened. She had stood up to her former crew, defended the Valen, and proven herself as one of them. But deep down, she knew the conflict wasn't truly resolved. Logan and the others would return, and next time, they might not be so easy to stop. For now, though, Clara allowed herself a moment of peace. She sat by the fire, listening to the hum of the Valen's chants and feeling the warmth of their camaraderie. She had found a new family here, a new purpose. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them together with the Valen. Clara spent her first few days in the Valen village, observing everything around her. The villagers moved with purpose, their glowing skin shimmering softly as they worked. They spoke in low tones, their language flowing like music, but Clara couldn't understand a word of it. Ethan acted as her guide, explaining what he could and translating when necessary. At first, the Valen kept their distance, watching Clara with curious eyes. She felt like an outsider, unsure of how to fit in. Ethan had warned her that earning their trust wouldn't be easy. "They've seen humans before," he told her one evening as they sat by a communal fire. "Not all of us were kind to them." "What happened?" Clara asked, her voice quiet. "Some came here long ago," Ethan said. "They promised friendship, trade, help. But when they got what they wanted, they left. Broke promises. Hurt the Valen. Ever since then, they've been careful about outsiders." Clara nodded, understanding why they might see her as a threat. She knew she had to prove herself, not just to survive, but to gain their respect. The next morning, Clara decided to start small. She noticed that many of the Valen were busy tending the fields of strange plants near the edge of the village. The plants looked like nothing she'd ever seen, with broad leaves that glowed faintly in the sunlight. Some of the villagers carried water from the nearby stream, while others knelt to pull weeds or check the soil. Clara approached cautiously, holding out her hands to show she meant no harm. One of the Valen, a tall woman with glowing green eyes, looked up at her. Her expression was calm but guarded. Clara pointed to the bucket the woman was carrying and mimed lifting it herself. The woman hesitated, then handed it over. Clara took the bucket carefully, testing its weight before heading toward the stream. It wasn't easy work. The buckets were heavy, and the path to the stream was uneven. By the time she returned, her arms ached, and sweat dripped down her face. But when she handed the full bucket back to the woman, she saw a flicker of approval in her eyes. It was a small victory, but it gave Clara hope. Over the next several days, Clara threw herself into helping wherever she could. She fetched water, gathered firewood, and even tried her hand at planting seeds under the guidance of the Valen farmers. At first, her efforts were clumsy, and more than once, she dropped tools or spilled water. But the villagers didn't scold her. Instead, they patiently corrected her mistakes, showing her how to do things properly. Slowly, she began to improve. As she worked alongside the Valen, Clara started learning bits of their language. Ethan helped her practice, teaching her simple words and phrases. Water was za, thank you was kai, and help was nor. Clara repeated the words over and over, practicing them whenever she interacted with the villagers. To her surprise, they seemed pleased by her efforts, smiling faintly when she stumbled through a greeting or request. But not everyone welcomed her presence. One young Valen man, whose name Clara learned was Tion, watched her with suspicion. He rarely spoke to her, and often muttered under his breath when she passed by. Clara tried not to let it bother her, focusing instead on those who were willing to accept her. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that Tren's distrust might cause problems later. Despite the challenges, Clara found herself growing closer to the Valen. They weren't just teaching her practical skills, they were sharing pieces of their culture. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the villagers gathered around a large stone altar in the center of the village. Clara watched as they lit candles made from wax-like resin and began chanting in unison. The sound filled the air, haunting and beautiful. Ethan explained that it was a ceremony to honor their ancestors. They believe their past guides them, he said. It's important to them. Clara listened quietly, feeling a deep sense of awe. She realized how much she still had to learn, not just about survival, but about living in harmony with this world and its people. One day, while exploring the outskirts of the village, Clara stumbled upon something extraordinary. Hidden among the rocks was a series of ancient carvings, similar to the one she had found near her original camp. These, however, were far more detailed, depicting scenes of Valen life alongside images of human figures. Clara traced the symbols with her fingers, her mind racing. Could these carvings tell the story the humans Ethan had mentioned? Ones who had betrayed the Valen. She called Ethan over to show him. He examined the carvings closely, his brow furrowed. "This is important," he said finally. "If we can figure out what it means, it might explain why the Valen are so cautious around us." Together, they brought the discovery to Lyra, an elder who served as a leader and historian for the village. Lyra studied the carvings with keen interest, her glowing eyes scanning the symbols. After a moment, she turned to Clara and Ethan, speaking slowly in her melodic voice. Ethan translated for Clara. "She says these are stories from long ago," he explained. "Humans came here promising peace. But when they left, they took resources and left destruction behind. The Valen suffered greatly." Clara felt the pang of guilt, even though she hadn't been part of those events. She understood now why the Valen were hesitant to trust outsiders. It wasn't just about fear, it was about history repeating itself. Determined to make amends, Clara threw herself even deeper into helping the village. She volunteered for every task, no matter how difficult or tedious. When a machine used for grinding grain broke down, she offered to assist in fixing it, using her knowledge of tools and mechanics. With Ethan's help, she managed to repair the device, earning grateful nods from the villagers. Her hard work paid off. Over time, the Valen began to warm up to her. They included her in meals, taught her new skills, and even allowed her to participate in their ceremonies. Clara felt a sense of belonging she hadn't expected to find on this alien planet. Even Trent's attitude softened, though he remained wary. One afternoon, as Clara worked in the fields, he approached her hesitantly. "You're different," he said in broken English, surprising her. "Most humans, they take. You give." Clara smiled, touched by his words. "I'm not like them," she replied. "I want to help." Tewa nodded, his expression unreadable, but Clara sensed a shift in his demeanor. For the first time, she felt truly accepted by the VEYL. As the weeks passed, Clara continued to learn and grow. She discovered that the Valen had a deep connection to the planet, treating it almost like a living being. They believed that harming the land would bring misfortune, and they lived in balance with their environment. Clara admired their way of life and began to see the planet not as a hostile place, but as a home. Through her interactions with the Valen, Clara also uncovered clues about the mysterious metal fragment she had found earlier. Lyra explained that such objects were remnants of the humans who had visited long ago. Some of them had left behind technology, but much of it had been lost or destroyed over time. Clara wondered if any of it still existed, and if it could help her find a way back to Earth. For now, though, Clara focused on building trust and learning as much as she could. She knew that leaving the Valen too soon would undo all the progress she had made. But deep down, she also knew that her journey wasn't over yet. Somewhere out there was a chance to escape this world, and maybe even expose the betrayal that had left her stranded in the first place. As she lay beneath the stars one night, listening to the distant hum of the Valen's chants, Clara felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was thriving. And for the first time in months, she dared to dream of a future beyond this planet. Clara's days began to blur together. Each morning, she woke with the same goal in mind: survive. But as time passed, something inside her shifted. Survival wasn't enough anymore. She needed answers. The metal fragment she had found near the carvings haunted her thoughts. Who or what had left it behind? Was it proof that others had once walked this planet? These questions burned in her mind, driving her to explore further than she ever had before. One day, while following the stream that had become her lifeline, Clara noticed something unusual. Footprints. They were faint, barely visible against the rocky ground, but they were there. Someone or something had been here recently. Her heart raced as she knelt to examine them more closely. The prints were human-like, with 5 toes and a distinct heel mark. But they weren't exactly human. The shape was slightly off, as if whoever made them had broader feet or wore strange footwear. Clara hesitated. Should she follow the trail? It could lead to danger. Then again, it might also lead to help. After a moment of deliberation, she decided to take the risk. Staying put wasn't getting her any closer to finding answers or a way off this planet. The trail led her deeper into the wilderness, away from the safety of her camp. The terrain grew rougher, with jagged cliffs and dense patches of glowing moss blocking her path. Clara moved carefully, keeping her knife close and her senses sharp. Every sound made her jump: the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an unknown creature, but she pressed on. After hours of walking, she came to a clearing. In the center stood a man. He was crouched over a small fire, roasting something on a stick. At first, he didn't notice her. Clara froze, unsure what to do. Was he human? Or was he one of the planet's native inhabitants? His clothes looked strange patchwork garments, stitched together from different materials, but his build and posture seemed familiar. Finally, the man turned his head, sensing her presence. When their eyes met, both of them jumped back in surprise. The man reached for a weapon, a long curved blade, but Clara raised her hands quickly, showing him she meant no harm. "Wait," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm not here to hurt you." The man stared at her, his expression wary. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, slowly, he lowered his weapon. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice rough but clear. "My name is Clara," she replied. I was stranded here. My crew left me behind." The man studied her for a long moment before nodding. "Ethan," he said simply. "I've been here for years." Clara's heart leapt. Years? That meant someone else had survived this. Placed before her. Maybe Ethan knew something about the planet, or even how to escape it. She stepped closer, careful not to startle him. "How did you end up here?" she asked. Ethan sighed, sitting back down by the fire. "My ship crashed," he explained. "It was just me. No crew, no backup. I thought I was done for, but then I met the Valen." "The Valen?" Clara repeated, frowning. The name sounded alien. "They're the ones who live here," Ethan said. "Not humans, but close enough. They helped me survive. Taught me how to live off the land." Clara's mind raced. Intelligent life. This planet wasn't as deserted as she had thought. "Where are they now?" she asked. Ethan gestured toward the mountains in the distance. "Their village is beyond those peaks. They don't come this far often. It's too dangerous. But they're still around." For the first time in weeks, Clara felt a flicker of hope. If the Valen existed, maybe they could help her. Maybe they knew more about the carvings and the metal fragment. And maybe, just maybe, they could point her toward a way home. Over the next few days, Ethan taught Clara everything he had learned about surviving on the planet. He showed her which plants were safe to eat and which ones could heal wounds. He taught her how to track animals more effectively and how to avoid the predators that roamed the area. Most importantly, he warned her about the dangers of the Valen. "They're not hostile," he said, "but they don't trust outsiders easily. You'll need to earn their respect." Clara listened carefully, soaking up every bit of knowledge. She realized how much she still had to learn and how lucky she was to have found Ethan. Without him, she might never have discovered the Valen or understood their importance. Eventually, Ethan agreed to take her to the Valen's village. "But be careful," he warned as they prepared to leave. "They won't welcome you with open arms. You'll have to prove yourself." Clara nodded, determination burning in her chest. She was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. For the first time since being abandoned, she felt like she had a purpose. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was searching for something greater. The journey to the Valen's village was grueling. The path twisted through narrow canyons and steep cliffs, forcing Clara and Ethan to climb and crawl their way forward. Along the way, they encountered strange creatures, some docile, others aggressive. Clara used the skills Ethan had taught her to fend off attackers, earning his approval with each successful encounter. When they finally reached the village, Clara was awestruck. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. The structures were made of stone and woven vines, blending seamlessly into the natural landscape. Glowing moss lined the walls, casting a soft light over everything. The air buzzed with activity as the Valen moved about, tending to crops, repairing tools, and caring for their young. The Valen themselves were humanoid but distinctly alien. Their skin shimmered faintly, like the moss, and their eyes glowed with an inner light. They watched Clara and Ethan approach with cautious curiosity, their expressions unreadable. Ethan stepped forward, speaking in a language Clara didn't understand. The Valen responded, their voices melodic and rhythmic. After a brief exchange, Ethan turned to Clara. "They'll let us stay for now, but you'll need to show them you're worth trusting." Clara nodded, her heart pounding. This was her chance. If she could win the Valen's trust, she might uncover the secrets of the planet and find a way to escape it. She glanced at Ethan, who gave her an encouraging smile. "You've got this," he said quietly. Clara took a deep breath, stepping forward to meet the Valen. For the first time in weeks, she felt a spark of hope. She wasn't alone anymore. The sun rose higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the rocky terrain. Clara took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves as she studied the carvings on the stone. They were strange but fascinating lines and curves that seemed to form patterns almost like a language. She wished she had more time to study them, but survival came first. Every second she spent standing still was another second she risked being caught off guard by something dangerous Clara knew she needed to find water soon. Her throat was dry, and the thin air made it even harder to breathe. She glanced around, searching for clues. The glowing moss that grew in patches nearby might be a sign of moisture, but she wasn't sure if it was safe to touch or eat. Instead, she decided to follow the faint sound of trickling water she had heard earlier while exploring. It was faint, almost like a whisper, but it gave her hope. Walking carefully, Clara kept her knife ready in one hand. The ground was uneven, littered with sharp rocks that could easily cut through her boots if she wasn't careful. As she moved, she noticed small creatures darting between the plants. Some looked like insects, their bodies shimmering with iridescent colors, while others resembled lizards with elongated tails. Most of them ignored her, but a few watched her warily, their eyes glinting in the sunlight. Clara didn't know which ones were harmless and which ones might attack, so she stayed alert. After what felt like hours, she finally found the source of the sound, a narrow stream winding its way through the rocks. The water was clear and cold, and Clara knelt beside it, cupping her hands to take a drink. It tasted clean, refreshing, and she let out a sigh of relief. Water meant life. With this discovery, she felt a little less afraid. She filled an empty container she had scavenged from the wreckage of their landing pod and tucked it into her. Now that she had water, Clara turned her attention to food. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, reminding her that she hadn't eaten in over a day. She scanned the area, looking for anything edible. The glowing moss caught her eye again, but she hesitated. Eating something unfamiliar could be deadly. Instead, she focused on the smaller creatures she had seen earlier. If she could catch one, she might be able to cook it over her fire. It wasn't easy. The creatures were fast and skittish, disappearing into cracks in the rocks whenever she got too close. But Clara was patient. She crouched low, waiting silently until one of them ventured near. When it did, she acted quickly, grabbing it with her hands. It squirmed in her grip, its tiny legs kicking wildly, but she held on tight. Back at her camp, she used her knife to skin and prepare the creature before roasting it over the fire. The smell of cooking meat filled the air, and though the taste was strange, It was enough to quiet her hunger for now. As the days passed, Clara settled into a routine. Each morning, she would check her supplies and plan her next steps. She explored the area further, mapping out landmarks in her mind. The mountain she had seen in the distance became her goal. If there was any chance of finding help, or even just better shelter, she figured it would be there. But the planet wasn't kind to her. Strange storms rolled in without warning, bringing freezing rain and howling winds that threatened to extinguish her fire. During one particularly bad storm, Clara huddled beneath a rocky overhang, shivering as the wind tore at her clothes. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the landscape in brief bursts of light. She covered her ears against the deafening thunder, feeling small and powerless against the forces of nature. When the storm finally passed, Clara emerged to find her camp partially destroyed. The fire was out, and some of her supplies had been scattered by the wind. She cursed under her breath, but forced herself to stay calm. Panicking wouldn't help. She gathered what she could salvage and rebuilt her shelter, reinforcing it with larger rocks to protect against future storms. Despite the challenges, Clara began to notice things about the planet that intrigued her. The glowing moss, for example, seemed to react to her presence. When she touched it, the light grew brighter, pulsing gently before dimming again. She wondered if it was alive in some way or if it served a purpose beyond decoration. There were also the birds, or bird-like creatures, that flew overhead. Sometimes they circled her camp, watching her with curious eyes. Clara tried to mimic their calls, whistling softly, and to her surprise, they responded. It was a small connection, but it gave her a sense of companionship in an otherwise lonely world. One evening, as she sat by her fire, Clara thought about the carvings she had found. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were important, that they might hold answers to who or what had lived here before. She decided to return to the site the next day, hoping to uncover more clues. When she arrived, she discovered something new. Nearby, half buried in the dirt, was a piece of metal. It was rusted and worn, but unmistakably man-made, or at least made by intelligent beings. Clara's heart raced as she picked it up, turning it over in her hands. Could it be evidence of other humans? Or perhaps proof that aliens had visited this planet long ago? The discovery gave her renewed determination. If someone else had been here before, then maybe there was a way off this world. Maybe she wasn't truly alone after all. That night, as she lay awake staring at the stars, Clara allowed herself to dream. What if she could find a way to contact Earth? What if she could expose Captain Logan and the others for what they had done? The thought fueled her resolve. She wouldn't give up, not now. Not ever. This planet was harsh, yes, but it was also full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered. And Clara was determined to survive long enough to solve them. Each day brought new challenges, but also new discoveries. She learned which plants were safe to eat and which ones burned brightly when thrown into the fire. She fashioned tools from scraps of metal and bone, improving her ability to hunt and gather. Slowly but surely, she adapted to her surroundings, becoming stronger and more resourceful with each passing week. Still, there were moments when doubt crept in. Nights when the loneliness felt unbearable, when the vast emptiness of the planet seemed to press down on her chest. On those nights, Clara reminded herself why she was fighting so hard. She thought about her crewmates, about the betrayal that had left her stranded here. And she promised herself that if she ever saw them again, they would regret leaving her behind. For now, though, survival remained her focus. One step at a time, one challenge at a time. Clara may have been abandoned, but she refused to let despair define her. This world was unforgiving, but so was she. Clara stood on a rocky hill, her heart pounding as she watched the ship grow smaller and smaller in the sky. It was leaving her behind. She clenched her fists tightly, trying to hold back the anger and sadness that were bubbling inside her. The wind whipped around her, cold and sharp, but she didn't move. She just stared until the ship disappeared completely. This wasn't supposed to happen. Clara had joined the exploration team because she wanted to discover new worlds and help humanity. Learn more about the universe. She never imagined her own crew would turn against her. They were supposed to be a team working together. But now, standing alone on this strange planet, she realized they had seen her as nothing more than a problem to get rid of. The fight had started over something small. At least, it seemed small at first. The crew had been arguing about whether to explore deeper into the planet or stay near their landing site. Clara had suggested staying close to the ship, pointing out how dangerous the area looked. She reminded them that they didn't know much about the planet yet. What if there were predators? Or bad weather? The others laughed at her. They said she was too scared, too cautious. Captain Logan was the worst. He called her weak and accused her of slowing everyone down. "We don't need someone second-guessing us at every turn," he had said loudly, his voice full of frustration. Clara tried to explain herself, but no one listened. By the next morning, she woke up to find the camp empty. Her crewmates had taken everything useful with them, the food, the water, even the communication devices. All that was left was the knife strapped to her belt and the clothes she wore. Now, alone on this deserted world, Clara felt fear creep into her mind. The air here was thin, making it hard to breathe deeply. The ground was uneven, covered in jagged rocks and patches of glowing moss. In the distance, mountains loomed, their peaks hidden by thick clouds. Everything around her looked alien and hostile. For a moment, she wondered if she could really survive here. But then, something inside her snapped. Anger replaced the fear. How dare they leave her like this? Did they really think she would give up and die? No, she wouldn't let them win. If they thought she was weak, she would prove them wrong. Taking a deep breath, Clara forced herself to focus. Survival came first. She needed shelter before night fell. The temperature was already dropping, and she knew it would get much colder once the sun went down. Scanning the area, she spotted a cluster of large boulders nearby. If she could squeeze between them, she might be able to create some protection from the wind and cold. She worked quickly, moving rocks and debris to make a small space where she could huddle. It wasn't perfect, but it would do for now. Next, she needed fire. Fire meant warmth, light, and maybe even a way to scare off any animals that might come looking for her. Clara knelt beside a pile of dry twigs and leaves she had gathered earlier. Using her knife and a piece of flint, she struck sparks onto the tinder. After several tries, a tiny flame flickered to life. Carefully, she added bigger sticks, feeding the fire until it burned steadily. As the warmth spread through her body, Clara allowed herself a brief moment of rest. She leaned back against the cold stone, closing her eyes. Her stomach growled, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since yesterday. But she couldn't risk eating anything unfamiliar without knowing if it was safe. Hunger would have to wait. For now, sleep was more important. Before lying down, she checked the area one last time to make sure there were no immediate dangers. Satisfied, she curled up near the fire, wrapping her arms around herself for warmth. As she drifted off, her thoughts turned to revenge. They had left her for dead, thinking she wouldn't last long. But they were wrong. If she ever saw them again, they would regret what they had done. The night passed slowly. Clara woke several times to tend to the fire and listen for sounds of danger. Each time, the silence around her was broken only by the distant calls of strange creatures. By the time dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, she felt slightly better. Prepared for the day ahead, she stretched her stiff muscles and set out to explore her surroundings. The landscape was both beautiful and intimidating. Strange plants dotted the ground, some glowing softly while others swayed gently in the breeze. Birds or things that looked like birds flew overhead, their cries echoing eerily. Clara kept her knife close, her senses sharp as she moved farther from her camp. Not long after, she found something surprising: carvings on a flat stone. The symbols were intricate and unfamiliar, etched deeply into the surface. Someone or something had been here before her. The discovery gave her a spark of hope. Maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. Maybe these markings could lead her to answers or even salvation. Clara traced the symbols lightly with her fingers, committing their shapes to memory. She decided to document them later, using whatever tools she could find. For now, though, survival remained her top priority. One step at a time, she told herself, one day at a time. Clara may have been abandoned, but she refused to let despair take over. This world was harsh, unforgiving, but so was she. The wind howled across the barren landscape, carrying with it the scent of dry earth and something metallic that Clara couldn't quite place. She stood on a rocky outcrop, her hands clenched into fists at her sides, staring up at the shrinking silhouette of the ship that had just left her behind. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat echoing like a drum in her ears. Betrayal burned inside her, hot and sharp, but she forced herself to stay still, to watch until the ship disappeared completely from view. Clara had always known space exploration was dangerous. She'd signed up for the risks asteroid collisions, equipment failures, unknown alien life forms. What she hadn't expected was betrayal, not from her own crew. They were supposed to be a team, working together to uncover the mysteries of this uncharted world. But now, as the last glimmer of the ship vanished into the endless sky, she realized they had never seen her as one of them. To them, she was expendable. Her mind raced back to the argument that had sealed her fate. It had started innocently enough, a disagreement over whether to explore deeper into the planet's rugged terrain or stick close to their landing site. Clara had argued against pushing too far, pointing out the lack of reliable maps and the unpredictable weather patterns they'd already encountered. The others had dismissed her concerns, calling her overly cautious. When tensions escalated, Captain Logan accused her of undermining his authority. That's when things turned ugly. "You're slowing us down," he had snapped, his voice cutting through the tense silence of their makeshift camp. "We don't need someone questioning every move we make." "I'm not questioning you," Clara had shot back, her voice rising despite her best efforts to stay calm. "I'm trying to keep us alive." But her words fell on deaf ears. By the time morning came, the decision had been made. Without even waking her, they packed up the essentials and left her behind. No food, no water, no way to call for help. Just the clothes on her back and the knife strapped to her belt. Clara had woken to find the camp deserted, the faint hum of engines fading in the distance. Now, standing alone on this desolate planet, she felt the full weight of her situation pressing down on her. The air was thin here, making every breath shallow and labored. The ground beneath her feet was uneven, littered with jagged rocks and patches of strange glowing moss. In the distance, towering mountains loomed, their peaks shrouded in mist. The horizon stretched endlessly in all directions, offering no sign of rescue or hope. For a moment, despair threatened to overwhelm her. How could she possibly survive? Here, she wasn't equipped for this kind of environment. But then something inside her shifted. Anger flared, hot and fierce, driving away the fear. They thought they could leave her to die? Fine, let them think that. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of being right. Taking a deep breath, Clara turned away from the empty sky and focused on the task at hand, survival. First, she needed shelter. The temperature was dropping rapidly as the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the land. Nightfall would bring freezing temperatures, and she couldn't afford to be caught out in the open. Scanning the area, she spotted a cluster of large boulders nearby. If she could wedge herself between them, she might be able to create some semblance of protection from the elements. She moved quickly, her movements deliberate despite the ache in her muscles. Each step sent sharp pain shooting through her legs, but she ignored it, focusing instead on the rhythm of her breathing. Reaching the boulders, she began clearing away loose rocks and debris, creating a small alcove where she could huddle for warmth. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. Next came fire. Fire meant heat, light, and a chance to ward off any predators lurking in the darkness. Clara knelt beside the pile of dry twigs and leaves she had gathered earlier, striking her knife against a piece of flint salvaged from the wreckage of their landing pod. Sparks flew, igniting the tinder. A small flame flickered to life, and she fed it carefully, adding larger sticks until the fire crackled steadily as the warmth seeped into her bones. Clara allowed herself a moment of rest. She leaned back against a cold stone, closing her eyes briefly. Her stomach growled, reminding her of another pressing issue: food. She didn't dare eat anything unfamiliar without knowing if it was safe, so for now, hunger would have to wait. Sleep, however, was unavoidable. Exhaustion tugged at her eyelids, and she knew she needed to rest if she wanted to face whatever tomorrow held. Before lying down, she scanned the area one last time, ensuring there were no immediate threats. Satisfied, she curled up near the fire, wrapping her arms around herself for warmth. As she drifted off, her thoughts turned to revenge. They had underestimated her, written her off as weak. Little did they know, Clara was stronger than they gave her credit for, and if she ever saw them again, they would regret leaving her behind. The night passed uneventfully, though Clara woke several times to tend the fire and listen for sounds of danger. By the time dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, she felt marginally better prepared for the challenges ahead. She rose stiffly, stretching her sore limbs before setting out to explore her surroundings. The landscape was both beautiful and terrifying. Strange plants dotted the ground, some emitting soft, pulsating lights, while others swayed gently in the breeze. Birds or creatures resembling birds soared overhead, their cries echoing eerily through the stillness. Clara kept her knife close, her senses on high alert as she ventured farther from her makeshift camp. It wasn't long before she stumbled upon something unexpected: a series of carvings etched into a flat slab of stone. The symbols were unfamiliar, intricate patterns that seemed almost deliberate. Someone or something had been here before her. The realization sent a thrill of excitement coursing through her veins. Maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. With renewed determination, Clara set about documenting the markings, tracing them lightly with her fingers. Whatever these symbols meant, they were a clue, a thread she could follow to unravel the mysteries of this world. And maybe, just maybe, they would lead her to salvation. For now, though, survival remained her top priority. One step at a time, she told herself. One day at a time. Clara may have